Is everyone able to see my screen? Awesome. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about audience aggregation, which is a very important aspect of inbound marketing. Okay, so it's a very important aspect of inbound marketing. It's different from generating traffic for a website. It's about dividing audiences into distinct groups to which you can send customized marketing messages to. Over the course of this session, just give me one moment. Over the course of this session, what we'll be understanding is we'll get a sense of what audience aggregation really means. We'll get to look at quite a few real life examples, and we'll also get to understand how we go about implementing audience aggregation primarily using emailers. And that's something which is very important. So, while there are several ways, Sudeep, are you able to hear me? If there is a problem, why don't you call the support number or why don't you disconnect and reconnect? I'm assuming there is no problem for anyone else. Hello? Can you guys hear me? Okay, cool. Let's carry on. So, well, there are several ways through which you can actually aggregate audiences and reach out to them with customized messaging. Social media is a great tool which enables people to do that, but this is not a session on social media marketing. So, this is a session which will give you a holistic perspective of of what audience aggregation is, and we'll also get to understand how you can perform audience aggregation using emailers. And over the course of this entire session, I'll give you quite a few real life examples of how brands have been using audience aggregation techniques for achieving several objectives. I'll also give you some examples from my own personal experience of working at various organizations as to how we went about using audience aggregation techniques through emailers. A few things to keep in mind while you begin the session. You've got to make sure that you watch the entire video in a single setting. Please have a notebook and pen and ask questions. I'll have logical breaks in the entire session, and please make sure that you ask relevant questions during each of those logical breaks. First of all, audience aggregation. What exactly is audience aggregation? So, what I want you guys to do is just don't open Google. Based on whatever you understand from the term audience aggregation, why don't you all send out a note, send a private chat to me, which talks about what audience aggregation means to you in your own words. So, the idea is like in the previous session, we want to get a sense of the delta. Right? So what your understanding is at the beginning of the course versus how your understanding evolves and grows as the course progresses. So take a couple of minutes and send me a private chat on what audience aggregation means to you. Your time begins now, guys. Hi, Amit. I think somebody needs to go on mute. Is that you, Amit? Somebody needs to go on mute. See, I'm getting a lot of background noise. I think that was Ashish. Catching the attention of people of similar needs, selling that to a third party. Yep, 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 yep. Assuming everybody can see what's there on my screen. Let's just give it another minute. Let's a few more responses trickle through. Okay, now that we've got some pretty interesting responses, I think all of you have a lot of relevant responses in there. Can you help me understand? And this is something which we will cover in the subsequent portions of the presentation as well. Is it the same as generating traffic for your website? Yes or no? And if not, why not? So if there is, say, a website which gets, say, 100,000 visits a month, does it means that it is an aggregated audience? So the question is this. The question is this. So let's say that I am running a website, www.abc.com. Let me just open up my notes. Let's assume I'm having a website which is www.abc.com and I'm getting around 100,000 visits each month. Is this an aggregated audience set? That's my question. Yes. I want you guys to tell me if it's yes or no. If yes, why so? If no, why so? Hi Sunil, good morning to you. So this was the question which I was having. So today we're having this session on audience aggregation. So we're going to give everybody an overview. This is session number 2 of the inbound marketing course, and we're going to give everyone an overview of what audience aggregation means, and we're going to look at quite a few real life examples and some examples from my own professional experiences of audience aggregation using emailers. And the question which I was having for everybody was, let's say, first of all, people were talking about what audience aggregation means in their own words, and I wanted to get a sense from the people around the room of for this particular question, right? So let's say there is a website abc.com which is getting a certain traffic. I wanted your opinions on if you believed this traffic set which the website is attracting qualifies for being called as an aggregated audience set. Yes or no? If yes, what are your reasons? If no, what are your reasons? Okay, Sudeep has a response. Okay, anybody else? The answer, okay. So here's the answer, right? So, and you can look at my note screen. The answer is no. And I'll tell you my reason. I mentioned that this is 100,000 visitors a month. I didn't say these were leads. Right? All of these are consumers who are of ideally a homogeneous demographic profile, who have possibly a passing to a very strong interest in the brand and in the value propositions, right? So let's say you're digitalvidya.com and you get whatever it is you get. Let's say you get 100,000 visits a month, right? So typically what would happen is that your traffic to lead conversion rate, lead is somebody's, so let's say there is a lead generation form you have on the website wherein you capture the visitor's name, email address, phone number, blah blah blah, their area of interest and so on. Typically, your traffic to lead generation conversion rate is usually anywhere from, say, 3 to 7%. These are industry averages. So, which means that you would probably have around 3 to 4,000, 7,000 leads being generated each month, right? And these would be, let's say, these are your course leads. Let's say there are 3 or 4 digital marketing courses which Digital Vidya offers, and the aggregate of all of these are 3 to 7,000. And let's say that there is also a Digital Vidya blog, digitalvidya.com/blog, where there is information of webinars, ebooks, um whatever it is, right? So let's say there is a recorded course recordings, etc., 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 white papers. And for getting access to this content, let's say there is another lead gen form. And so let's say the blog gets around 50,000 visits a month. And out of which you get a, since the ask from the customer in the case of the blog is very little, right? You're not like the customer is actually not indicating interest in purchasing a course, like in this particular case when they go to Digital Vidya and they give their lead form on a course page. Here the ask of the customer is significantly lower, so here the conversion rates would typically be high, anywhere from 10 to 15% in terms of traffic to lead. So let's say that it's 10% just for argument's sake, so which means that you get around 5,000 leads here. So this 3 to 7,000 leads which you have, and these 5,000 leads which Digital Vidya has, these are your aggregated audiences. The 100,000 visits per month on the flagship website and the 50,000 visits per month on the blog are not really aggregated audiences because they are not captive. I don't have any information about that visitor. If I had managed to capture, let's say I have a pop-up right on the homepage where I managed to capture all of their lead information right up front, and I can possibly target them afterward with some kind of custom messaging, then yes, they are aggregated audiences. But in this case, they are not aggregated audiences. The leads which I've captured, yes, they are aggregated audiences. Is this clear? By leads, I mean people who actually given you information, their demographic information, name, email address, phone number, and what is it that they're interested in. Are they interested in listening to a webinar, interested in downloading an ebook, say interested in purchasing a course by spending 20,000 rupees, whatever it is. So here's the follow-up question. So let's say that let's go with the same Digital Vidya example again. Correct, Abhishek, you're right, that means sharing their data. So digitalvidya.com, let's say that on their Facebook page they've got, let's say they've got 50,000 followers. Now, are these aggregated audiences? Is this an example of an audience aggregation? And on Twitter, let's say they've got 5,000 followers. And on LinkedIn, let's say they've got 4,000 followers. Are all these aggregated audiences? Yes, absolutely. So the answer is yes. All of these are examples of aggregated audiences because here Digital Vidya can, again, this is a captive audience set. In the website case, once I have their lead information, I can target them through follow-up email campaigns, nurture campaigns, as they're called, drip email campaigns. Or even if they do not give their lead information, even if they come and follow me on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or any other social media platform, or even subscribe to my news feed, do an RSS subscription, that still means that I can reach out to them subsequently through some form of marketing communication which is intelligent, which is targeted, which is relevant. Digital marketing affords me those capabilities to be able to target these audiences as a follow-up, to generate follow-up conversations and to nurture them through the entire buying decision making cycle. I think in the last session we spoke about how almost 9 of the 100% audiences whom you attract to your website, close to 98% have little to no interest in purchasing your product in the immediate or near term. It's only 2% who are looking at purchasing your product in the immediate near term. So for this 2%, all of these efforts at nurturing them is not really required because they're already sold on your brand. They're already interested in your product. It's to this 98% that you've got to do all the song and dance. You've got to slice and dice them into multiple demographic, geographic, interest-based buckets and send them targeted messaging by aggregating them into specific audience sets and sending them customized messages, either through email, through follow-up email campaigns by capturing the lead information, or through social media. You with me so far? Any questions? Okay, cool. Let's move on. So, audience aggregation, what and why? This is something which we just went through. So, this is a typical flow which any digital organization goes through for attracting audiences to its website. So, it typically runs a whole host of digital marketing campaigns, which could be a mixture of search engine advertising, display advertising, it could be remarketing efforts. Yeah, it could be email marketing efforts, it could be social media marketing, it could be search engine optimization, right? They've probably done a very good job of writing a whole host of really engaging content which is relevant to the target audiences. So Google starts ranking up their pages pretty high in the organic search listings. So they get a lot of traffic from SEO, and that generates reach for the brand, and that attracts traffic to the website. Now, what audience aggregation allows brands to do is it allows, so once they actually land on a website, what typically brands do is they get the customer to perform multiple kinds of call to actions. And that's what I was talking about here. If you go back to my, it's going back to my notes again, there are multiple things that a customer can do. One thing is there are so once a customer, we spoke about engagement magnets, right? There needs to be something which can incentivize the customer to perform some kind of desired action. So there needs to be some kind of a customer call to action, so to speak, on the website. One is obviously the ideal holy grail, which is purchase, which happens probably in say less than 1% of instances. The second kind of a desired call to action, which you can make customers actually perform, is give up their lead information. And the third kind of thing can be to give some kind of an indicative interest in the brand by asking them to follow you on social. That could be another kind of a call to action which you can get them to perform. So all of these generate aggregated audiences for you, which you can then farm, nurture, and hopefully harvest over a period of time into actual paying customers. So what happens is you get different kinds of lead pools, you aggregate them into specific audience buckets, and you have different kinds of email marketing, social media marketing efforts, even sales efforts for farming them into eventual sales, eventual revenue and paying customers. So as I mentioned earlier, audience aggregation essentially is about creating captive audiences for you whom you can nurture, talk about your brand, talk about your value propositions. And this has been used since time immemorial in politics. For example, this Prabha, this was one of Lenin's this was a mouthpiece of Lenin for the Communist Party, which was headquartered in Moscow, and it was used for influencing public opinion on the Communist Party's policies, whatever kind of decisions they were making, the thinking behind the decisions, and so on and so forth, and selling the larger concept of communism to the Russian people as a whole. Indian opinion again, right? So if you had a look at it, so satyagraha, the term satyagraha actually originated in South Africa almost 20 years before it was introduced by Mahatma Gandhi in India. And it was the Indian opinion newspaper back in South Africa that actually first spoke about satyagraha. That was a paper which was specifically targeted towards the Indian demographic bucket, and that was something which did really well, and that's where the term satyagraha was introduced even before it came to India. In politics, right, you see social media. Narendra Modi, for example, is amongst the most highest followed celebrity figures in India on Facebook, right after Salman Khan and I think Deepika Padukone and possibly Sachin Tendulkar or MS Dhoni. So he's in the top five in terms of the number of people who are actually followed on Facebook. So that gives Narendra Modi and the Bharatiya Janata Party and the government of India a specific captive audience on social media to send targeted posts to influence public opinion. So this is again an example, a very good example of audience aggregation being used in the political context. Again, this is a snapshot of various brands, various political figures, various political parties actually using audience aggregation on social media, which is on Facebook, for gaining captive audiences whom they can then influence subsequently. Here again, this is an example of how HubSpot has gone about using audience aggregation on Facebook. I think somebody has a question. Let's just quickly look at it. Just like shareholders in an organization. Um, yeah, you could possibly think of it. Shareholders, yes, are in a sense an example of an aggregated audience set because they do have a certain vested interest in the success of the organization. Employees in an organization are also an example of an aggregated audience. And I think let me just take a slight diversion here. I think the last time we spoke, I'm not sure how many of you guys remember this. It was a couple of weeks ago. I spoke about some of my experiences at Simply Learn. So there we used to have different kinds of aggregated audiences. I think I spoke about the concept of hot leads all of those people who drop their lead information on a course page. These are people who are these are piping hot leads, so to speak. So these are leads which have a very strong inclination for purchase. So here what we used to do was we used to directly hand these leads off to sales, saying that you guys go ahead, call up these people and convert them and generate revenue for the business. We also had these cold leads, as we called it, who were like significantly far away from making a purchase decision, who had maybe downloaded an ebook or shown interest in our webinar. So these leads, we typically hit them with marketing drip campaigns. So we did not hand these leads off to sales because the sales time is fairly precious, the sales team's time. So marketing's job was to make sure that we nurtured all these cold leads. We warmed them up by conducting webinars, by sending them, by giving them an opportunity to look at an ebook, by giving them an opportunity to download a white paper, warming them up, and hopefully then getting them back into a hot lead, converting them into a hot lead. So these cold leads might then eventually come back and drop a lead on a course page. We then marketing then passes the ball on to sales, saying that this guy is now a hot lead, he's now fairly warm to a purchase decision, he's close to making a purchase decision. Now you guys go in, make the call, make the sales pitch and convert them. uh, that's essentially what we're talking about here as well. So if you look at HubSpot's case, this is an example of how they've been using social media for actually aggregating audiences. They look at, they do multiple kinds of things. So, for example, in this particular context, they're talking about they're using the webinar as a content marketing tool and asking people to come in and register, because they're able to do this because they already have an aggregated audience set who's actually following them on Facebook already, and they're reaching out to them. It can also be used for conveying some information and for furthering your larger brand objectives. They're just talking about a new office being opened in Sydney. They're also generating a lot of interesting content. They're talking about changes in the Facebook newsfeed algorithm. And that's something which they're talking about. So all of those people who are looking at HubSpot as a destination which provides curated digital marketing news, that actually furthers that objective. It helps talk to those audiences who are looking at just keeping themselves updated on the latest trends and happenings in digital marketing. So this is an example of reaching out to specific cold leads, very, very cold leads, icy cold leads, so to speak, who are probably not interested or even looking at purchasing HubSpot as a marketing automation platform, but who are just using HubSpot as a content property. But this is an example of an audience aggregation technique, which is reaching out to all of those icy cold leads in your entire customer universe bucket. And this is an example of a piece of content which is specifically targeted those people who are not necessarily icy cold, but who are fairly cold, but who have, say, a reasonable interest in, say, considering HubSpot as a marketing automation platform, and they want to attend a webinar to see what they have to offer. This is an example of audience aggregation on Twitter. HasGeek, I'm not sure how many of you guys have heard of it. This is a platform which runs a lot of hackathons. It's a cool startup which is based in India, and it runs a lot of hackathons all across the country. And this is an example of how they use audience aggregation on Twitter. And here again, they talk about several things. They talk about how DroidCon, which is an example of their hackathon conference, they're actually able to curate a lot of responses from the Twitterati, the larger Twitterati audiences, larger audiences on Twitter, and they're actually able to curate feedback, get feedback, and they're able to also engage with their audiences. All of those nerds and geeks and tech architects who are interested in hacking, who are interested in anything related to technology per se, they're able to engage with them. They're able to interest them with specific pieces of content. So this is an example of audience aggregation on email. Conversion Excel happens to be a very, very popular platform which a lot of marketeers and brands use across the world for improving conversion efficiency and optimization for a website. And this is an example of a drip email campaign which they have sent to several of their leads, which talks about how you can use data to take advantage of several growth opportunities. And as you can see, there are two kinds of call to actions here. One is a call to action which allows readers, this particular one, which allows readers to actually read a new blog which they've actually posted around this particular topic. And the second was giving them access to a particular report, which is an outcome of a survey which they undertook with their customer audiences. This is again an example of audience aggregation. And one of the key things to remember when you talk about audience aggregation is this is primarily targeted towards those people who are not necessarily completely sold on your product. So the place which you have at your disposal, the kind of communication you use, the kind of content pieces you put out to them cannot be overtly silly. The idea is you nurture these audiences, you massage them, and you warm them up to your brand over a period of time, and then convert them, which is basically harvesting these leads by passing them on to sales. Yes, so Abhishek, you're talking about suspect, prospect, and lead. Here, where I'm coming from is in a digital organization. The way it works is sales, especially telesales or inside sales, typically engages only with those audience sets who are fairly warm, to the brand's value propositions, who have at least a passing interest in actually spending money with the brand. And this applies both in the enterprise context and in the B2C context. Sales does not go after every single lead which is out there. It's marketing job to make sure that the lead which is passed on to sales is fairly qualified, has a certain affinity towards the brand, is at least looking at considering spending money with the brand in the near term. Only those, so it's marketing's jobs to make sure that the leads which are passed on to sales are really qualified. And this entire process of audience aggregation nurturing is essentially that it's about qualifying your customers who are eventually then passed on to sales. Does that make sense? Okay, moving on. Now what I want you guys to do is take another couple of minutes, and I want you to now redraft the definition you had made earlier of audience aggregation and send me a revised definition. So why don't you guys take a couple of minutes and send me a revised definition of what you think audience aggregation means now. Yep, audience aggregation means customers who are. Uh, hmm. So I think all of you have, in a large part, conveyed what audience aggregation really means. In essence, what we're talking about is creating a captive audience. That's step number one. And then making sure that you go after those captive audiences and you nurture those captive audiences and you handhold them through the entire purchase decision making life cycle till such a point where where they've really warmed up to the brand, and you then pass the baton on to the sales team for them to harvest those leads and convert them into paying customers. Some of those leads could directly end up becoming paying customers without the handoff to sales, even before the handoff to sale, which happens. But whatever my experiences of the Indian e-commerce ecosystem, or at least in the online education space where you're selling non-standard products, like for example in the digital Vidya case, is that you need a lot of sales hand-holding to happen before somebody actually transacts. Uh, Moving on. So this was a question which I asked right at the beginning, right? So let's say there is a website getting a certain traffic, a certain volume of traffic each month. Are these visitors aggregated audiences of the website? I think what we clearly established was an unequivocal no, because these are visitors. These are not captive audiences. If these were leads, yes, they are aggregated audiences, but these are not leads. You have no information of these visitors. So these are not aggregated audiences. Having said that, uh, you could possibly think of them as an argument can possibly be made that these could be aggregated audiences because of the rise of this new concept which is known as remarketing. How many of you guys have heard of remarketing? And how many of you know what cookies mean? Yeah. So for the guys who are unaware, let me just talk about it. So cookies are essentially a piece of JavaScript code which gets downloaded onto your computer or laptop or MacBook or mobile phone or tablet when you go and access a particular website. A lot of websites, global websites, especially websites in Europe, get explicit permission from the user before they actually start using cookies. A lot of websites in India do not, but typically what happens is you go to a Flipkart, you go to an Amazon. What happens is they download a certain cookie gets downloaded onto your system locally. So the next time you use the same browser, Amazon knows it's you. So even though you've not actually dropped a lead information on their website, or even though you might not have dropped a lead information on Digital Vidya's website, you must have noticed this, right? Once you go to the Digital Vidya website, even if you've not dropped a lead on their website, you see Digital Vidya ads following you wherever you surf on the internet. Those are all remarketing ads. So as the name suggests, it's remarketing. So you're repeat marketing to the same set of audiences who've already come to your website using cookies. So, for example, those digital Vidya ads, this is something you could try out. The same digital Vidya ads would not be following you if you had to say A, clear your cache or clear your cookies, or B, if you had to use an incognito window, or C, if you had to use a completely different browser or a completely different device. So let's say you first visited digital Vidya on Chrome, now you open Safari and you visit the same digital Vidya website, or you surf anywhere, the digital Vidya ads would not follow you. So if you had to visit Digital Vidya again on the Safari browser, then it would again start following you on Safari. But let's say you visited Digital Vidya on Chrome, but you do your surfing on Safari, there will be no remarketing ads. Digital Vidya can't follow you there. So as long as you use the same device and the same browser, the remarketing ads keep following you using that cookie, which is embedded on your local computer. So, in a sense, you can think of, say, remarketing. An argument can be built that remarketing is again, since because of the availability of remarketing, even the traffic which a person attracts to a website is, in a sense, aggregated audiences. But the amount of intelligence and the amount of slicing and dicing which you can perform on remarketing is limited. And what we're essentially talking about here is audience aggregation through email, and that is anyway not something which is possible just basis traffic. So in that context the answer is no. Is that clear? So that's a good question, Sunil. So what we typically do is that if a lead has been generated, not so if a purchase has happened, what we do is we remove all of those people who've already made a purchase from your remarketing list. So what happens is there is something called as a conversion pixel, which every remarketing platform embeds on your thank you page. So let's say you have an e-commerce site, which has a thank you page, which is the page which the customer sees after they've made a payment. Let's say you've gone to Flipkart and you've purchased maybe a bag of baby diapers, and you see a confirmation page after you've paid. So what would happen is that all of those cookies which have made a purchase are excluded from the remarketing pool. There is no remarketing done to them. You would stop seeing Flipkart ads for that particular product at least. If you visited other products, you would see remarketing ads for those. But for the diaper which you've just bought, you would not see remarketing. If that's happening, that means that somebody in the digital marketing team there has screwed up. But typically, that's how we do remarketing. Does that answer your question? Okay. Moving on. So the other important question is, why do you even want to aggregate an audience? Why go through all this trouble, right? And that's something I think we partially answered during the earlier part of the presentation. It's a huge boost to your content marketing efforts because you have a base set of audiences to whom you can promote your content to. As I said earlier, you have the 98 plus 2 rule. It's only 98% of people have absolutely no interest in purchasing or spending money with your brand in the near term. So how do you keep engaging them? How do you keep nurturing them through the entire buyer decision making life cycle? And that's essentially what point number two is talking about. Now what I want you guys to do is probably take 3 minutes or maybe a little more and think through how you believe audience aggregation efforts can actually support your content marketing needs. uh, just think through, take a few minutes, and we'll again see how your answer actually evolves over the course of this entire session. Abhishek, I actually didn't understand your question. So you're saying they do take explicit permission. Yes, they do take explicit permission, but in the context of remarketing in India, a lot of websites don't really say that I'm going to be using cookies for retargeting you. So that's something you don't need. So a lot of websites. So for example, nobody actually asks that question. A lot of websites in abroad, globally, in the United States, in Europe, are legally bound to ask that question to customers. So if customers can actually opt out of cookies being used and can actually opt out of being part of the remarketing pool. In India, that option is a lot of times not provided to customers. So Shobit, my question was this: what you see on the screen here. I want you guys to write down how you believe audience aggregation can be used to support your content marketing efforts. Just write down whatever comes to your mind, and we'll see how your answer evolves over the course of this session. Abhishek, I'm not sure I followed your question. Hmm. So Shobit, I like your answer. I think that's pretty bang on. Anybody else? Hmm. So Kaushik, so here's the that's an interesting point that you've raised. So here's the thing, right? So there are uh, a couple of different things that audience aggregation through content marketing gives you. A couple of objectives you can solve for. So one is a marketing objective, which is you get a stronger understanding of your customer's demographic profile, as a result of which demographic profile, customer need state, etc., as a result of which you're able to send more targeted campaigns, targeted communication. And the larger is a business objective. There is a larger business objective, something which I was alluding to earlier. It's a pragmatic stance which you're taking. You know that 98% of people are not interested in buying your product. So instead of shooing them away at the door, you spend money in bringing them to your website. You capture those leads and you nurture them. You nurture them. You nurture them, and you handhold them, and you get them to a point where they're willing to spend money with you, and you then make the sale. So it achieves the larger business objective of revenue growth. And the point which Sudheep said is actually interesting. So he says that through customer aggregation, you can engage those audiences through different campaigns and later can make a lead out of it. So some of you might say that, hold on, these people are already leads. So why be generating a lead? So you have a lead which is generated first, which then turns into an aggregated audience set. And Sudheep is talking about creating another lead out of it. Is that actually right? Some of you might have that question. So the answer to that is that the initial lead could, the example I gave you earlier, right? The first time the lead which we're talking about here, let's say this is lead A, right? So this could be a cold lead for all you know, or an IC cold lead. This could be a guy who's maybe indicated interest in downloading a webinar, sorry, or on say in attending a webinar, or in downloading an ebook, or in downloading a white paper, or in just subscribing to your weekly newsletter. He's not even remotely interested in purchasing a product which you have. So this could be an IC cold lead for all you know. So this is an example of a lead, which then goes into an aggregated audience set. Maybe you have set of email campaigns which is specifically targeted at this IC cold bucket or this cold bucket. And then over a period of time, you engage with that user for maybe 2 3 months. The person then becomes a hot lead. He comes to your course page in the digital vidya context and says that, yes, I'm interested in purchasing the digital marketing course. And then he or she drops their lead information, after which the sales team takes over. Is that clear? So that's what Sumit, that's why I like Sumit's answer as well. So some of you might get confused because you might actually think that audience aggregation starts only after I have the lead. In some cases, even in this presentation, what you would see is that audience aggregation actually results in creating leads for you. What means is that you get a more qualified lead, a lead with a stronger intent for purchase through your audience aggregation efforts. But you need to have some kind of a lead base to begin your audience aggregation. Just traffic alone is not enough. Does that make sense? Okay. So moving on. So this is essentially what we've been talking about earlier. You have an audience, a universe of people who have more than a passing interest in spending money with your brand. You take them through nurture streams, and then you eventually harvest them, which in our context would mean an actual sale or a purchase. So audience aggregation and content marketing go hand in hand. So you have an audience and you harvest that audience through inbound interest, and then you also use content marketing, and you use content marketing efforts to actually make sure that you qualify the audience set as they go through the entire purchase decision making life cycle. This is essentially what I was talking about earlier, right? So you have leads both at the beginning and at the end of audience aggregation. So these are like two sides of the same coin. So you have leads before audience aggregation, you have leads after audience aggregation. For example, this could be an IC cold lead. They become a part of an IC cold aggregated audience set, and they have a specific customized message plan which happens for them. They turn probably into cold leads. And then they go into another different aggregated audience set before they eventually become hot leads. So in a lot of cases, what you would see is that audience aggregation and content marketing go in a circular loop. They're not just sequential. And that to me is the single biggest takeaway I want you guys to have. It's a circular loop and not sequential. But one thing you have to remember is that the beginning point is always a lead or an indication of interest from the customer, which could be maybe following you on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. Does it make sense? Cool. So it is a circular loop, but it begins with lead information being captured. So now let's again look at a few examples of email promotions, which a lot of brands have used. This is an example of how Quick Sprout. So Neil Patel, how many of you guys know of Neil Patel, by the way? Have you guys heard of this slightly eccentric gentleman? So he's one of the global thought leaders. He was, in fact, the founder of Kissmetrics as well, which is a huge global platform for web analytics, for customer engagement. It does everything from A/B testing to marketing analytics to product analytics, mobile app analytics, and so on and so forth. And he's also a global thought leader, very similar to Avinash Kaushik. So he's a thought leader on digital marketing, on product conversion optimization, and so on and so forth. This is an example. The Quick Sprout is it's another of his brain children, so to speak. And this is an example of how he's used email as a very good audience aggregation technique, like audience aggregation through email. He's tried to establish his own credibility as a thought leader in the space of SEO. For example, he's talking about how the length of content actually affects your rankings and eventual conversions. This is an example of an email promotion, and this is an example of how Digital Vidya actually uses emailers for in the context of driving registration for webinars. So what typically happens is that, so let's say there is a webinar which is happening on the 3rd of April. This is a pretty and dated webinar. What happens is that you have registrations which keep happening over a period of time, and there are repeated emailers which go out to audience sets. So initially, it goes out to the entire set of audiences who have indicated interest in attending the webinar, and then you have follow-up reminder invitations which go out to all of those audiences. Once the audiences register for the webinar, they are removed from the subsequent follow-up email which goes out, reminding them of, the initial outreach goes out to the entire lead database, out of which certain registrations come in. After the registrations come in, all of the people who have already indicated interest in attending the webinar, they're removed from the list, and a subsequent email goes out, which again invites registrations for webinar. So this is again an example of how Digital Vidya uses audience aggregation via emails for driving webinar registration, which is an example of content marketing. Let me just see any questions. Yep. Okay. Kissmetrics Twitter promotions again. So very similar. This is again something which our friend Neil Patel uses really well. He was the founder of Kissmetrics. He's talking about why email marketing crushes social media marketing for B2B. And the answers are not hard to find. In the context of B2B, it's been statistically proven that email marketing always works better than social media marketing. In the B2C context, this was the case as well till a while back. But now with the recent changes to the social media, Facebook, organic newsfeed algorithm, organic reach is fairly limited. So email is gaining back a lot of the lost ground, which it lost to social media marketing over the past several years. These are some link stats which Kissmetrics provides, which is again which gives you a sense of the kind of rich insights which you can actually draw because you're actually using digital marketing for aggregating an audience sets. You can actually get a sense of which are the locations from where all of your audience sets are actually coming in, which are the geographical locations, which are the traffic sources, which are the referring traffic sources from your audience sets are coming in, which are the geographical locations from where your audience sets are coming in. You can get a complete lowdown on all of that information. This is an example of how HubSpot, I'm assuming everybody has heard of HubSpot here. It's a global leader in marketing automation, not something which a lot of small and medium business enterprises can afford. I always recommend Act-On to a lot of SMBs and startups. It's an awesome Act-On. That's the name. You might want to note it down. This is an awesome marketing automation platform, and it's very affordable for small and medium enterprises. Once you scale and once your business scales and you're at a certain level of maturity, HubSpot is something you can certainly subscribe to. It offers a lot of rich functionalities and features which are not available in Act-On. And here again, this is an example of how HubSpot is talking about how landing pages, the best practices in terms of having lead gen forms on landing pages and so on. And here again, HubSpot actually does a lot of analysis in terms of trying to understand which are their referring traffic sources, which are the countries from where all of their traffic is coming from. As you can see, close to 1 out of 2 visitors who visit HubSpot, they come from Facebook. So social media is a critical component of their lead generation and audience aggregation efforts. So here again, this is another curated list of all of the pieces of content which HubSpot uses for audience aggregation. So, quick, let me just pause very quickly here and get a sense from the audience. Any questions so far? Let's just take a small pause here, and I want you guys to think through. If you have any questions, I want you guys to bounce it off me. You can just send it in the chat window, and I can feel those. Any questions, guys? Okay. Yes. So Kaushik, that's exactly what I was telling you earlier. So Kaushik's question is how can we further funnel the audiences before they actually become a hot lead or in the process of becoming a hot lead. This particular example I gave earlier is an example of just that. So as I mentioned earlier, audience aggregation and content marketing or nurture streams go in a circular loop. They're not sequential. And but it begins with generating a lead who might have a very very small and passing interest in the brand, which could be an icy cold lead. As I said, the person, this could be an example of a person who's maybe subscribed to a weekly newsletter which a brand provides, and he or she then goes into an aggregated audience set. They are nurtured, and then they have a little more stronger leaning towards the brand and the value propositions the brand has to offer, and they become possibly a cold lead because now they're interested in attending a webinar. They go into a different aggregated audience set, and they're again massaged, they're again nurtured, and then they eventually turn into a hot lead, and then they're passed on to sales. And here again, this is not a one-way street. In a lot of cases, sales might come back and say that this guy is still not ready. This hot lead, which marketing has deemed as hot, is not exactly hot because the guy is not interested in making a purchase. So in some cases, what happens is that sales sends the lead back, and the lead gets downgraded back to cold, or in some cases, the lead gets deemed as dead, in which cases a lot of communication stop for a certain period of time. Or even in some cases, what happens is that the hot lead makes a purchase. The hot lead ends up making a purchase, and you again, this is still an aggregated audience set because you want to drive repeat behavior for that particular user with the brand. Let's say you've purchased a digital marketing course now in the context of digital vidya. Now I want you to purchase, let's say you purchased a search engine optimization course. Now I want you to purchase a course on search engine marketing or social media marketing. Now you're already a customer. I want to repeat engage with you. So you are part of a different aggregated audience bucket, which is a bucket of existing customers. Does that make sense? Sumit, did that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions, guys? Okay. So moving on. So track.in, I'm sure a lot of you would know of this website. This is again a very famous digital media platform which provides a lot of information about latest happenings in e-commerce, in mobile phones, in electronic gadgets, and so on and so forth. And this is an example of how they're actually putting out stuff which provides their audiences with a curated list of, say, popular gadgets in 2012. And they also look at which are the referring sources of traffic to their website, which is social media, email, and so on. So now you guys had earlier spoken about how audience aggregation can support content marketing efforts. Now I want you guys to go and revisit that response which you had given earlier and talk about how now you believe audience aggregation can actually support the content marketing efforts which you have planned for your business. And let's see if there are any changes to your response. You guys waiting for your responses? Hmm, interesting. Steve, thanks for that. Anybody else, guys? Okay, guys. So what we'll do is we'll take a 10-minute break now. It's been an hour since we started. The my clock. I'm assuming all of you can see this. It says 11:04. We'll reconvene at 11:14. 1-4. See you in 10 minutes, guys. Hey Aman, can you hear me? So we're actually on a break right now. So the session is going to begin in another couple of minutes. Just hold on. Hi guys, welcome back to the session. Uh, can everyone hear me okay? Great. So before we restart the session, I thought I'd interest you with a very one of the brands which I look up to as a benchmark when it comes to content marketing, when it comes to branding, when it comes to digital marketing is Airbnb, and it's one of my personal favorite brands as well. And they had done a very innovative campaign which did multiple things, which gave them multiple benefits. One was a benefit in terms of obviously furthering their own brand perception in the eyes of their target consumers. That's number one. And the second objective it furthered was it helped them actually generate specific aggregated audience sets which actually followed them on Twitter. And they actually created an entire campaign which was focused on crowdsourcing 6-second Vine videos. How many of you have heard of Vine? So Vine is basically a video hosting platform like YouTube, except the only difference is that the videos on Vine are just 6-second clips. Okay, so what they did was they had this entire campaign which was focused on the audience had to do two things. One is they had to follow Airbnb on Twitter. So they're actually generating aggregated audience sets on social media, which is a captive audience set for them. And B, they had to send over to Airbnb specific wine video clips, 6-second clips of their own travel experiences, which they then stitch together in a wonderfully created collateral, which actually talks about. So the paper arrow, I'm going to be sharing a YouTube link with you guys very shortly. The paper arrow which you see in the YouTube link is actually in a sense the traveler. They're using a metaphor of a paper arrow for being a traveler, and it created a wonderful content, which piece of content, a content collateral, which they actually used in their content marketing efforts. It got over close to, I think, 400,000 views on YouTube. It was a hugely viral video, and that was something. So this is again an example, clear example of a circular loop being used, right? So what they've done is they have a very interesting hook or an engagement magnet. That's something which we spoke about at the beginning. A user hook, a customer hook, which is an example of an engagement magnet, which we spoke about earlier in the last session for generating aggregated audience sets. And here, the innovation which they brought about was that, as along with the audience aggregation, they asked customers to actually create specific pieces of interesting content for them. They actually crowdsourced interesting pieces of content, which they then curated into a wonderful piece of content, which they used in their content marketing efforts. And from that point on, again, you'll see audiences which are even more qualified, moving into higher level orders of audience aggregated buckets. For example, people who actually come onto the website and indicate interest in actually traveling, or indicate interest in becoming a host, and so on and so forth. Let me just send you this YouTube clip. It's a fairly long video, so if you're interested, you can take. It's a 4 minute long video. My screen is stuck. Oops, haven't shared my screen. My apologies. I'm just sharing it now. My apologies. You've not missed anything. Don't worry. So, can you guys see my screen now? My apologies, guys. I missed sharing my screen. Yep. So, what I was saying was, in the context of Airbnb, what they did was they had a very interesting customer hook, which is an engagement magnet, which was about the users needing to create very interesting 6 second clips of their travel experiences on Vine. And then they obviously had to follow Airbnb on Twitter, so which was their means of actually generating audience aggregation. So the hook, the engagement magnet came first, then there was audience aggregation, then they crowdsourced pieces of content from users, which they then curated and stitched together in a larger piece of long form video content, which they then used for their content marketing efforts. And then they again created higher order levels of audience, more, with higher audience, I mean, aggregated audience buckets which had a stronger intent towards purchase. Let me put it that way. Stronger purchase intent, which could manifest itself in terms of either buying intent or hosting intent. So let me just send you this YouTube clip. So take a look at that. It's a 4 minute clip, but it's a very, very interesting video. What you need to understand is this was not done by them. Every single video clip which you see here actually came in from a traveler, from the larger traveler universe. It's completely crowdsourced, and they just stitched together the whole video into a wonderfully engaging piece of long form video content, which they then used in their content marketing efforts for audience aggregation. Take a look at that. Ping me once you're done watching the video, guys, and when you're ready to begin. Yep. Is everyone done watching the video? Okay. Great. Glad that all of you like the video. So, just to summarize, right? So, if you looked at the entire, while the end output is good, we need to understand their thought process, which went into actually preparing this. So, a lot of the basic fundamental building blocks of digital marketing strategies are in play here. First is they've started off with a very strong hook, which is about giving audiences an opportunity to create interesting short video clips of their travel experiences. A lot of people are suckers for that. So they started off with the engagement magnet, and they also built in a hook or a play for creating audience aggregation within that. They've asked people along with that to also follow them on Twitter. And once they did that, they've got awesome pieces of crowdsourced content. They didn't actually have to create the content in house. All they had to do was stitch the content together in a nice, engaging, long form video, which they then marketed to their audiences to try and move them, upgrade them over into higher order levels of aggregated audience buckets with stronger purchase intent or stronger intent towards hosting on Airbnb, or asking people, encouraging people to actually open up their spare bedroom or their spare villa or their spare flat as a possible place to stay as a guest house, so to speak, on as a homestay, so to speak, on Airbnb. So in that sense, it was a hugely popular video. The video in itself got over, as you can see, it's around 400,000 views on YouTube. So that is a Airbnb is always a brand that I look up to. They're thought leaders in terms of how they do branding, how they do digital marketing, how they do content marketing, and this is a clear example of that. Uh, Moving on, coming back to our presentation. So what audience aggregation essentially lets you do is it gives you an opportunity to engage with your potential customers over the long term. So this is a long term, a medium or a long term play. This is not something which a lot of brands which sells typically standard products utilize, and even they would utilize it in a different fashion as opposed to say a digital vidya. So let's take a small diversion here. Let me just go back to my notes. So this is how say a digital vidya would utilize audience aggregation. So let's say you go on to the digital vidya website and you either subscribe to the newsletter, or let's say you show interest in their course. What you would see is that on T0 you would see a thank you mail which says thank you for subscribing, or thank you for showing interest in this course. Here are some recent articles which you have authored, which will give you some confidence in what we have to offer you, and which will give you some confidence in the fact that you are in the right hands, right? And then say 5 days later, if the lead has not yet converted into a paying customer, what would happen is that another automated notification would come into that particular lead in that aggregated audience bucket set, saying, which would possibly talk about how digital vidya alumni are succeeding in their careers after having gone through the digital marketing course. And possibly 3 days later, there would be a call to action which talks about how you can actually talk to our career advisors today and get a sense of what kind of options are available to you if you were to say pursue a certification or a career path in digital marketing. And say possibly 7 days later you would have something which is fairly directly selly. So over the first three emails, as you would see, this is something which we typically employed at Simplilearn as well, and I've just said that digital vidya I'm sure must be doing something similar. So with the first three emails, the idea is to nurture the lead without hitting the lead with anything which is directly selly. So we're just subtly trying to influence brand perception in the lead's psyche about how digital vidya or a Simply Learn is a desired place for a person to pursue their digital marketing certification and advance their career options from that point on. This is how our alumni are succeeding, so which gives a sense of social proofing and credibility. So this gives you a sense of social proofing, as you can see. And the last interaction which typically happens is you hit them with a personalized coupon code. Let's say that if you the email might read something like, if you were to transact within the next 48 hours, here's your personalized coupon code having your name, maybe it is Sudip 30, for example, which gives you a 30% off on this particular course, only available for the next 48 hours. So the hypothesis, so if this had been the first point of interaction, let's say that in my first interaction with the lead, if I were to directly give the personalized coupon code, in all likelihood the lead may not have converted because he's coming through as being too silly. But I'm doing this at my interaction number 4. So there the chance of success are obviously significantly higher. So this is how a digital vidya or a Simply Learn which sells fairly non-standard products, which comes from say the online education category, would approach audience aggregation via emailers. Let's look at the context of an Amazon, for example. In the Amazon context, which is selling fairly standardized products where there is no real sales involvement, you might argue that there is no real need for a lead nurturing per se. But even in the Amazon context, they do perform certain kinds of lead nurturing. So here they don't have to go through all this rigmarole of actually establishing thought leadership, of actually having to influence brand perception in a certain fashion, because they're essentially selling fairly standard products, and the Amazon brand is fairly well seeded in the customer psyche. There is no need for them to sell the concept of the credibility of brand Amazon A, or the need for maybe buying a cell phone. Let's say I've gone to Amazon and I'm evaluating purchasing a cell phone. There really is no need. There really is no need for me to actually talk about the need, customers' need for actually purchasing a cell phone, because it's a fairly standardized product. So what Amazon would then do is it would directly hit you with point number four, or what it would do is that it would directly hit you with an offer saying that if you buy this mobile phone, and if you were to also, we also have an interesting offer for you. Along with this mobile phone, we also have the screen guard for you, which is available, and this entire package costs you whatever it is. Let's say the Amazon is $5,000, the phone is $5,000, and the screen guard is another, say, $500. We give you the whole thing for 5,100. That's a package deal. Why don't you go make the purchase? Here's your coupon code, and you need to make this purchase within the next 24 hours, right? So that's how an Amazon would employ lead nurturing. And let's say you've made the purchase of the mobile phone. Amazon typically works by expanding customer lifetime value. Customers typically interact and transact multiple times with brand Amazon. That's the nature of their business, that's the nature of their category. So they would typically try to upsell, cross sell products to you. So let's say you've made a purchase for a mobile phone, it's 24 months since you purchased a Moto G. They might possibly hit you with a notification. In fact, I was hit with a notification which asked me to upgrade to the latest version of the Moto G. They said that your previous version of Moto G is irrelevant, redundant, moot. Why don't you upgrade to this new and upgraded version? We have a special offer just for you. So that's how an Amazon, which is a huge brand which sells standard products, would approach lead nurturing, audience aggregation, versus, say, a Digital Vidya, which sells fairly non-standard products, would approach lead nurturing. Does that make sense? Any questions? And yes, Sudhir, they do remarketing as well. I was just talking about it in the context of email audience aggregation, which is the focus of our session today. Okay, so state of potential customers. So a lot of potential customers, a lot of them would trust your brand. Some of them are possibly stuck at the stage of buying. Some of them have a passing awareness of your product. Some of them know about the opportunity but don't really know about your product. Some of them have a huge sense of urgency for the purchase. Let's say that there is a person whose promotion is stuck, and the person actually has to get a digital marketing certification for the promotion. That kind of a person might have a sense of urgency for purchasing the course, but that's very rare. Most of the people would fall under this bucket. They know about the opportunity, but they don't, not really aware of the product, what it does. Some of them would be here, a small percentage here, and a very, very small percentage here, especially when you're talking about non-standard products. So there are several things which you need to look at, several facets to look at when you're actually looking at planting and nurturing leads. So the first thing is you've got to educate leads about the opportunity. That's number one. Second is you've got to make them aware of what you have to offer as a product. And the third thing is you also have to be able to talk to leads who are stuck at the buying stage, who have reasonable trust of your brand, and who have a sense of urgency for making the purchase. So you've got to talk to all kinds of lead audiences. And as you can see, this is exactly what I was talking about earlier, right? So you've got a huge number of eyeballs which come through. This is the marketing funnel. This is a typical marketing funnel. And then you've got the eyeballs which go through awareness, consideration, preference, wherein they're actually preferring your brand over others. And then action is when they're actually making the act of purchase. Loyalty is when they actually come back to you and repeat transact with you as a brand. And there are dropouts. As you can see, the funnel grows thinner as you go further and further along. This is a typical marketing funnel, from eyeballs to buyers. And you need to make sure that your audience aggregation efforts and your content marketing efforts talk to audiences at every point in the entire funnel, and not just people who are at this point, who are at the point of action, but people who are at the point of preference, people who are at the point of consideration, people who are at the point of awareness. These are the same thing which I spoke about earlier, right? You've got icy cold leads, you've got cold leads, you've got hot leads. So these could be your icy cold leads, these could be your cold leads, these could be your hot leads, and these are your customers, these are your repeat customers. Does that make sense? So, moving on. So, there are several things which you need to do as part of the entire content marketing nurture stream, so to speak. You've got to convince customers about the opportunity, educate them about usage. The third point, which is very important, is removing barriers or points of inertia. I think this is something which I mentioned in our last class. Customers typically come out with, there are 20 different excuses which customers or leads come out with for postponing purchase. How can you make sure that you can remove all those barriers for the customer to actually transact with the brand? The other point which your nurture streams have to do is you've got to incentivize usage, wherein you actually give them some kind of a strong carrot for them to actually interact with your brand. The next point is around rewarding loyalty. For example, let's say I'm a very, very loyal flyer on Emirates, like for example, and they've given me a gold class and they have a loyalty scheme. I'm a Skywards member. So there needs to be some kind of a loyalty program which rewards customers and makes them feel special. Create a sense of urgency needs to be created as well, just to make sure that customers transact in the here and the now, and with strong purchase action, or a call to action, so to speak. So what I'm going to do now over the next few slides is to give you examples about each of these different points, about how you can convince customers about opportunity, educate about usage, and all of the other points that you see on the slide. Let me just quickly see if there are any questions. Let me just take another quick pause here before I move into the next portion of the presentation. Any questions so far? Okay. So this is an example about how HubSpot is actually convincing people about the opportunity which is there around digital marketing. So here they're not actually, if you notice, they're not actually convincing people about why HubSpot is the best option for them to choose when it comes to marketing automation, but they're trying to talk to those leads who are still not sold on the concept of inbound marketing, who are still not sold on the concept of digital marketing. So what they're actually talking about, this was a mail which went out in 2008, which was during the heights of the financial depression, the entire crisis which came through, the financial bubble which burst, and so on. And where they spoke about how brands and businesses are actually struggling to measure ROI. Money is hard to come by, so which is why digital marketing is now relevant more than ever before. And they're saying that because digital marketing gives you all of the advantages which we know of, which inbound marketing offers. It offers you flexibility, real-time targeting. It offers you deep and rich analytics. It gives you the ability to run on a budget of your choice and not a budget which is determined by the media platforms. So all of these advantages. So they're actually convincing their aggregated audience lead buckets on the opportunity. This is an example of that. This is again an example which from HubSpot again, which talks about how they're convincing people of the opportunity in using personalized content in emailers in your marketing, and how it actually influences customers' perception of your brand and increases your chances for success, improves click-through rates, and so on and so forth. This is again an example which HubSpot uses, wherein they actually. So what HubSpot realized, and this was something which was a deep insight which Dharmesh, their founder and CEO, had, was that it's not just the marketing teams which influence the decision on making a purchase of a marketing automation system. The sales teams in a lot of cases are also involved. So this was a play which they made, wherein they actually said that how sales can use Twitter to connect with more prospects, how sales can actually use social media for connecting with prospects. So they were actually trying to bring in a lot of sales folks, people from the sales organization in their target companies, into the entire conversation loop. This was a very clever play which they employed, and this is again an example of how they were trying to convince customers about the opportunity. Conversion Excel, something which I mentioned earlier, it's one of the global leaders in terms of conversion optimization. And this is an example of how they're convincing customers about the opportunity. They've given an ultimate guide for increasing e-commerce conversion rates with best practices and so on and so forth. Again, not silly at all, completely subtle. It's all about trying to position the brand as a thought leader, as a credible destination for people to work with, for consumers to work with when it comes to the domain which they're talking about. Mixpanel, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Mixpanel, right? Mixpanel is, again, it's an awesome tool for A/B testing. It's an awesome tool for mobile analytics. It's an awesome tool. It's very similar to Kissmetrics. I like Mixpanel a lot more personally. in terms of measuring digital marketing, results, in terms of measuring, in terms of getting specific product analytics and all of these. It's an awesome product. And they actually put out this wonderful article which talks about bullshit metrics, right? They say that brands should stop measuring metrics which make no business sense, which talks about, say, new users, etc., but doesn't really talk about engagement. And that is again a very interesting play, because that positions themselves in the minds of the marketer, saying that this here is a company which is in the space of analytics and is actually telling people to stop looking at useless metrics. So they really care about my business. So it actually helps build that perception in the customer psyche that this is a company which is really serious about what they do and knows about what they do, and again convinces people about the opportunity around digital marketing. Kiss metrics again, uh, a, a competitor to Mixpanel. It talks about five must-have matrices for your SaaS business. Again, not silly at all. It convinces people about the opportunity. What you need to understand is education about usage and convincing about opportunity are very, very neighboring. In a lot of cases, you would see a certain level of overlap. What you need to understand is what is the primary objective that particular outreach is solving for. Let me see if there are any questions anybody has. Okay. Any questions so far? If there are questions, feel free to ping me at any time. Any questions? Shall I carry on? Okay. So here's the next thing, right? So once you've actually convinced customers about opportunity, what they're now looking to do is educate customers about usage. So here, what they're actually giving users a sense of is, what they're saying is, there is a usual marketing funnel which every business tracks, and this is what it looks like if you were to actually track it on Kissmetrics. So this is an example. This is a screenshot which is actually taken from the Kissmetrics platform, which gives businesses an actual visual perspective, a visualization of what it would actually look like on the Kissmetrics platform. So it's actually, they're actually educating customers about usage on the Kissmetrics platform. So this is a slightly stronger play compared to the earlier one, which was slightly more generic and high level, which is about educating people about the opportunity. Here, this is more ingrained about the product itself. So here they're talking about how you can actually use dynamic tags to personalize your email. So earlier, if you were to know, if you were to look at it, if I were to look at, if you were to go back 3 slides, here HubSpot was not talking about itself. In this particular slide, which I'm sure all of you are able to see, it talks about how personalized content is hugely advantageous when it comes to your marketing efforts. Fast forward 4 slides where they're actually trying to educate about the product. Here they're talking about how you can use dynamic tags on HubSpot for personalizing your emails. So here they're actually trying to educate customers about usage of their product. It's not generic, it's not about the domain, it's about their product, but in a contextually relevant fashion for the customers. Here again, Mixpanel, same play. It's actually talking about how you can actually use Mixpanel for gauging different kinds of traffic sources, AdMob versus email invitation versus Facebook. So here again, the focus is on their product and not about a generic domain concept. Weebly is a web hosting platform, very similar to a Shopmatic or a Shopify. And here they're talking about, here again, they're trying to profile their customers. They're saying that you've signed up with us, but you've not really interacted with us, which makes us sad. This is again an example of product usage. They're driving usage for their product, and they're actually sending them a very customized email saying, you've not really finished up your web hosting. Is there something you need help on, and so on and so forth. And they're also trying to get some feedback from customers in terms of what is it that they're actually stuck on. Uh, Here again, this is the example of a personalized mail which has gone out right from the founder of Weebly. This is something even we employed at Simply Learn, and I'm sure the Digital Vidya does as well. I think some of you might have got a note directly from Kapil Nakra. So that level of personalized attention from a brand, where the founder or the CEO directly reaches out, really resonates and appeals with customers. So here again, remove barriers. So that's the next step. So a lot of people, for example, Google AdWords, this does this really well. So a lot of brands, traditional brands which are getting into Google AdWords, they know at a high level what Google AdWords means, but they don't really know how to go about setting up campaigns. So what Google does is they give them an AdWords specialist who is given free of charge. It's a completely complimentary service given by Google for helping businesses get started in setting up campaigns and moving forward. So they're actually removing barriers for usage, barriers for entry for customers. Here's the other one, right? So you could also use incentives for breaking down barriers. For example, Mixpanel gives them is giving users a free T-shirt because they're not actually signed up a deal, and this actually says that I'm data driven as well. So that's an example of how a carrot in the form of a free T-shirt can be used for actually driving usage and driving purchase behavior. And American Express does this really well through their loyalty and rewards programs, wherein they're actually using a lot of loyalty and rewards incentives to drive either activation or repeat usage and so on and so forth. The other thing is, so I'm not sure how many of you guys have heard of Patrick McKenzie, and so he has this website which has a very interesting name, calzumius.com. The story goes that he was trying to find different kinds of available domain names, and he could find nothing. And in a fit of frustration, he named his website after a dragon, which is there in Japanese mythology, which is Calzumius. He named the website was calzumius.com, and he's a guy who's very similar to a Neil Patel or an Avinash Kaushik, probably not in the same league, but he has his own set of loyal audiences, and he provides a lot of consulting services. He has his own proprietary platform for inbound marketing, and this is an example of how this is an example of his hacking lifecycle emails course. This is all the email has. It just says discount ends today. So if you're interested in purchasing and attending the hacking lifecycle emails course, which is starting possibly a week from now, you need to subscribe by today because the discount ends today. If you subscribe tomorrow, you're going to pay full price. So he's creating a sense of urgency in driving registrations for the course. Again, AppSumo, I'm not sure how many of you have heard of AppSumo. So AppSumo is a platform which provides a lot of great SEO insights. It's a platform which is loved by a lot of SEO professionals, very similar to a Moz or a Majestic. But I love Majestic. Majestic is my personal favorite. It talks about how you don't miss yourself in hours of design work. Don't miss out on saving yourself hours of design work. Come to AppSumo and use us, and so on. uh, Let me just see, there are some questions coming in. Okay. This is again Kissmetrics, a webinar registration outreach, which is trying to create a sense of urgency. Trigger purchase action. So here again, you've got a clear call to action, which is start your 30-day free trial. So this is again a very interesting play, which a lot of brands employ, which is popularly known as freemium. I think this is again something which I mentioned to you guys earlier, when they give you certain aspects of the content for free and certain which is paid or premium. A combination of these two is freemium essentially, which is free plus premium. So here what you can see they're trying to do is this particular brand, which is Unbounce, which is again very similar to your which is basically a conversion optimization tool. It's talking about, and it's an A/B testing platform similar to Mixpanel. It's talking about if you want higher conversion, start your 30-day free trial, no questions asked, no strings attached, free trial program. You can subscribe for it, and if you don't like a product after that, you can always unsubscribe, but you can use a product for free for 30 days. So that triggers a certain intended purchase action from customers. And here again, you've got a very clear call to action right in the middle of the product, which talks about click here to try Kissmetrics. And Kissmetrics again has a 14-day free trial program, wherein customers can get to use the product for 14 days for free before they can make a decision on whether they want the product or not. So these are again. So what you would see, you're anyway going to get this presentation. So these are again some examples of trigger purchase action, which Dell utilizes. So here again, it's talking about save up to. It's a specific offer which they're offering to customers. So what I'm going to do now is, so this is an interesting application, right? So this is something, Neil Patel is one of my personal favorites. So you look at the kind of attitude which the guy actually puts out in his communication. He's actually saying he's accepting applications for companies to hire me for SEO and digital marketing consulting. If you'd like to be considered, come to this website. So that's a very interesting way of trying to position your brand, your own personal brand, and your brand, neilpatel.com. About you're actually putting yourself in a pedestal, and you're almost saying that you're doing your clients a favor when they actually sign up on your lead gen form. It's not the other way around, right? He's actually flipped the entire tone of the conversation. Typically, when customers come to businesses, customers believe that it's in the business's best interest if the customers give their lead information to the businesses. Here, he's actually flipped the entire conversation on its head. He said that it's in your best interest if you were to come to me and hire me for your SEO and digital marketing efforts. That's a very interesting thing. Not a lot of people do that. And this is again Conversion Excel. Are you serious about increasing conversions? Take a look at our conversion research service. We did something very similar at Simply Learn, and I'll just show you that. Not sure if I showed you guys that the last time we spoke. So this is a career data labs, a property which we created, and this is a property which we continuously farm. We pulled out data from this property continuously, and we sent this to a lot of our customers. So this particular property, I'm hoping you're able to see my screen, gives you a lot of benefits in terms of what kind of quantitative benefits did professionals who graduated out of Simply Learn's ranks actually receive in their careers after having gone through a certification. It talks about the quantitative benefits in terms of pay raise, in terms of promotions, in terms of resume shortlists, and so on. It also talks about what kind of qualitative long-term benefits actually a lot of our alumni received after graduating out of our ranks. It talks in terms of increased confidence, better prospects, better projects, and improved workplace environment. And we used specific pieces of content nuggets from this entire property in engaging with our customers during the entire nurture process itself. So this is again an example of a trigger purchase action which AppSumo used. So moving on. So now this is an example. So now I want you guys to take 5 minutes and think through for your business. It could be an SMB, you could be working in a large organization, you could be an entrepreneur yourself. I want you guys to think through what kind of emails would you create for the business in question for nurturing your audiences. Just go back to what I had spoken about earlier in terms of how you can use email uh, nurture streams for engaging with your customers. So let's say you are a company which is selling non-standard products like a digital vidya is. You would have this kind of a playbook wherein you send multiple emails. First three emails are for establishing your credibility as a thought leader or as a fountainhead of knowledge in this particular domain. Also bringing in a certain level of social proofing, talking about how other people who've used your brand have succeeded in their careers, giving customers an opportunity to either try out your products for free or talk to your career advisors. It could also be, so T8 could also be try a free course or attend a free session. Before you actually hit them with a personalized coupon code and directly say, come, please transact with us. In the case of an Amazon, it would be completely different, as I said earlier. Let's say you've shown interest in a mobile phone. It's a standard product. You don't need to sell them on the need to buy that product. That's already done. The customer is already sold. The customer is looking for the best possible deal in this particular case. So how can you offer the customer the best possible package deal, for example? Or how can you repeat engage with the customer to explore upsell, cross-sell opportunities? So it's a horses for courses kind of an approach here. So you need to think through what kind of an email strategy would work for your business in your context. Uh, is the question clear enough? I want you to think through what kind of emailers would you create for your business, the business you are engaged with for nurturing your audience sets. So the time is 11:52. I want you guys to take 5 minutes, 5, 6 minutes. So we'll reconvene at 11:58. If there are questions in the meanwhile, please do put it up on the chat window of anything we've gone through so far in the session. Any feedback you have for whatever you've gone through so far in the session. I hope if you believe there are certain other aspects you would like me to cover, please point it out and we'll see if that can be covered. Or if you're completely happy with the session, please do pass on that feedback as well. And let's take the next 6 minutes. I want you guys to think through what kind of an email strategy you would follow for your business in question. And I expect your responses by 11:58, which is the next. We've got 5 minutes now. Your clock begins now. Hey guys, just looking through the responses. Uh, so in your responses, if you just talk about the kind of business like Rahul has done, which you are considering, because the email marketing approach which you have would be completely different basis the kind of business you have. For example, I think Rahul, from what I understand, you're having a retail shop which sells tea to customers. And you're talking about email marketing, so there obviously a personalized discount code or a coupon code is something which you can talk about. Testimonials from other happy customers. You're right. That's something which is important. And the other thing which you could talk about is maybe, if I'm assuming my assumption of your business is right, you could also talk about the kind of service levels which are offered in your retail store, which is say different from other players. And that's something which you could talk about. So, Rahul, your responses are fairly bang on. I have my own brand. Got it. So yeah, you could educate people on why your own brand is better than a lot of people in the competition. The other thing which you could also do is talk about the benefits of drinking tea in general, right? And maybe send a health tip a day or health tip of the week to customers, right? Wherein you're not just which builds a perception that this particular brand is not just interested in selling its products, but it is also concerned about my health, right? So that kind of a perception is built in consumers because there are only so many directly selly plays you can have. So if you can think of a few indirect options, subtle options for actually pushing the envelope on your brand consideration scores, you should certainly use that. Looking at Sudeep's response, email strategy for a travel company selling packages. Hmm. So, Sudeep, something which you should take a look at is Airbnb's playbook. So, what you're essentially talking about is the entire transactional nature of travel, right? So, what Airbnb has done, while all of your points are very valid, what Airbnb has done, and something which you should certainly take a look at and learn from is, and I certainly look to learn from, is they've actually managed to elevate the fairly mundane process of a regular transaction between a guest and a host into something larger. I think I spoke about the One Stranger List campaign, which they ran earlier, wherein they said that we are not in the business of helping a buyer find a place to stay, but we're actually in the business of removing one stranger at a time from the globe as a whole. That was an awesome campaign. And they also had this other campaign which spoke about don't just travel there, but live there, because it's all about local experiences. So trying to create those kinds of interesting hooks in a business relevant fashion for your travel company is what will create a differentiation, because there are travel companies a dime a dozen in the country today. How can you differentiate yourself? That's something which is very important. uh, Looking at these stars responses. Mhm. Great. So again, it's not required that so you could follow the Amazon or the Flipkart playbook. If you're selling completely standardized products, there is no need to go through all this rigmarole. You can directly, I mean, you can come out with some pockets of innovation here and there, but there is no need to educate people on the need for buying a diaper. There is no need to educate people on the need for buying a cell phone, the need for buying a washing machine. You can directly go in and talk about the best possible deal you have to offer, directly explore upsell, cross sell opportunities which are relevant. It's only in cases like these where you have slightly more non-standard products to offer that you have to think through, where you have services, where you're not just selling a regular product, a physical product, but you're selling services, that you have to go through all these rigmaroles. Uh, Moving on. So now, over the course of this section in the presentation, we'll actually look at how we can use. We'll spend some time and trying to understand how we can use emailers for doing audience aggregation and doing audience aggregation well. This is the concluding part of the presentation. So let's just take another 5 to 7 minute break. It's 12:02 in my clock right now. Let's reconvene at 12:10 in my clock and go through the 12:03 in my clock right now. Let's reconvene at 12:10 sharp, 7 minute break, and we'll go through the concluding part of this presentation. See you in 7 minutes, guys. Hi guys, welcome back. Before I begin and get into this part of the presentation, I wanted to show you guys a couple of examples of magazines or examples of content which I love from brands. One is obviously from my own personal favorite, which is Airbnb. Just show you, they have this magazine called Pineapple and airbnbmag.com, and this is it. Yeah. So airbnbmag.com. So this is an example. So you can actually subscribe to this magazine. You can get six physical issues which are delivered to your doorstep. You can also subscribe for the digital edition. This is an awesome example of, again, audience aggregation by giving them a carrot or a hook or an engagement magnet of a very interesting piece of content which can be used to further farm their leads and harvest it and so on. Please share note. Yep, let me just share the link right here. I'm not sure what you meant, Sumit. Were you talking about the URL? This is one. And the other thing is, for example, I consult for this brand consulting firm by name Landor. And we send out a magazine called Shift. What happened to this? Give me a minute. Oops, it's here. Just give me one moment. Shift. Yeah. So Landor is a brand and design consultancy. Yeah, I will certainly do that. I will share the notes at the end of the session, people. Oops, I think I've not shared my screen. My apologies again. Can you guys see my screen now? Yep. So what I was telling you earlier was that there are a couple of examples of magazines which a lot of brands have employed. This is the Airbnb mag, which is called Pineapple. Uh, Moving, I can see my screen now. So this is a great example of audience aggregation, where they're using an interesting piece of content for actually generating newer audiences, for pushing audiences who already have a passing interest further along in their brand consideration life cycle. They You have both print and digital versions of the magazine you can subscribe to, as you can see from here. The other magazine which I'm particularly fond of is this magazine called Shift, which is something which one of the agencies I consult for, which is an agency by name Landor, which is into brand and design consulting for various clients uses. So Shift magazine talks about all of the work which Landor has done with regards to packaging, with regards to design work for both traditional and digital brands, and showcases Landor as a real credible and aspirational partner to work with whenever you require any good branding or design work or packaging work for that matter. So the Shift magazine is again a case in point. So there are multiple things which a person needs to do. So this magazine is sent out to all existing leads, previous customers, prospects, and so on and so forth. Plus, for downloading the magazine from the Landau website, consumers actually have to give up their lead information. So it's both a lead generation source, plus it's also a very good engagement magnet or a piece of content or a content collateral for the brand, for brand Landor to engage with its existing pipeline of prospects, leads, and previous customers, and so on. Okay, now coming back to our presentation. So what we'll now do is we'll get to understand how we do audience aggregation through emailers. We'll look at quite a few examples and we'll get to understand how you go about doing audience aggregation through emailers. So the first thing is you need to select your distribution channel and then followed by your tool, which is your email platform. And the third thing which you need to do is you need to build up your audience set, which you can then farm through emailers, which is through multiple different ways, which we will go through. We'll go through how you actually build up your audience set. And the other thing which you, once you build up your audience set, is you need to give them engage. You've built up your audience set, yes. How do you now go about engaging them? You need to set up your content machinery in place, which involves multiple things to keep engaging and hitting those consumers and prospects with regular streams of engaging content and engaging tidbits. And then what you need to do is you need to set up and plan the entire customer journey. And then, of course, the last part is around segmentation and targeting. First of all, selecting a distribution channel. So there are multiple things you can look at. You can look at social media platforms, obviously, emailers, forums, or community sites. I'm not sure how many of you have used forums or community sites. For example, on LinkedIn, if I were to say go to LinkedIn and say search for digital marketing groups, So there are several. Oops, what happened? Let me click on groups. As you can see, there are several digital marketing groups which come in. So as a brand, what I can do is I can subscribe to become a part of any of these groups. Let's say you're Digital Vidya and you're looking to sell digital marketing courses to aspirants. All of these groups have target audiences which completely and clearly overlap with your target audiences as well. That's a no-brainer. So anybody who's a part of, say, this digital marketing group or this digital marketing group which is run by the DM Institute are going to be your prospects as well. So how do you find a way to engage with people on this particular group without coming through as being overtly silly? So if you directly go in there and say, here's my 30% off coupon code, they're possibly going to blacklist you. How do you make sure that you position Digital Vidya subtly and weave Digital Vidya into the narrative as a thought leader, as a credible destination for digital marketing aspirants? That is something which you need to think through, and that's something a lot of brands utilize and utilize well. Earlier I spoke about Quora. Right? Quora is a great place for, again, brands to insert themselves subtly into any given narrative or conversation around digital marketing. So for example, let's say you search for topic digital marketing. There could be so many different threads. For example, what are the best books on digital marketing strategy or marketing in general? Somebody has asked this question on June 21st. So let's say that there is this ebook or a white paper which Digital Vidya has authored around the digital marketing strategy for startups. This is a very nice opportunity, a very relevant opportunity for Digital Vidya to weave itself into the conversation. A link to the ebook can be given here. And anybody who clicks on that link directly lands on the Digital Vidya sites, gets an option to download the ebook after filling out their lead information. Good to see that you already use Quora, Vipul. So this is how you use forums and community sites where there are already conversations happening around your topic of interest, and where consumers who overlap with your target consumer universe already visit often and reside. So criteria to select distribution channel, there are several. First is obviously reach. And what we have seen is that, and this is statistically available data, what it says is that emails reach is significantly higher than Facebook, and which is significantly higher than Twitter. Of course, with the recent changes to the Facebook organic algorithm, there is limited organic reach, but still email trumps Facebook in terms of its reach. Here, what you need to understand is that we are not talking about your regular promotional spammy kind of emailers, but emailers which are sent out to people who have given their lead information on your website. So here, the kind of targeting accuracy which is available and the kind of reach which you get and the success which you get from your email outreach is higher than what you would get, say, on a Facebook. We're not comparing an ad campaign. We're not comparing a Facebook ad campaign versus an email promotional campaign. We're not talking about third-party email sends, which is sent to possibly a database of 5 million Indians living in metros, for example. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about regular drip email nurture streams or nurture campaigns versus, say, a Facebook campaign to organic audiences, people who already have a certain level of interest in the brand. Email certainly trumps Facebook in that context. And obviously, lower the frequency, the better, but you obviously need to look at a certain optimum number in terms of frequency of interaction when it comes to your target audiences, which is, say, either not too spammy and at the same time still adds value for the business. What I personally prefer, and this is something which is statistically proven, is that a frequency of two email outreaches or two Facebook posts a week is something which typically works well across different categories, and that's something which you need to keep in mind. uh, consumption pattern, again, that's something which is important. So if it's inline consumption, then obviously social media platforms are really good. So for example, if you're offering snackables, so to speak, and this is a term which a lot of people use in content marketing, they use the term snackables. If it's a quick, say, a 10-second or a 20-second video clipping which you want to provide, which can be consumed right then and there on the platform itself, then obviously social media is really good, because there the attention spans are really limited. So people prefer short forms of content. If it's a slightly more engaged form of content, let's say it's a white paper download, or you want people to actually look at an ebook or a white paper which is 50 pages long, emailers typically work better. In terms of its ability to slice and dice, profile, personalize, and target your audience's, emails are significantly better. And channel stability, again, you can either use an outsourced a third party email platform. There are enough number of email platforms out there. or you can try to build it on your own. Amazon, for example, uses its own proprietary platform for sending emailers, but not everybody has the capability of an Amazon. So, using a third party off the shelf product would certainly be preferred over a proprietary platform. And of course, it's not either or. It's a combination of several things which you need to use, and there is a certain learning curve which you would need to go through as a business before you actually determine what exactly works for your business in your context for your consumer demography. Uh, so now what we're going to do with this over the course of the rest of the presentation is to focus purely on email as a distribution channel and as a channel for engaging and nurturing audiences. There are separate sessions scheduled on social media marketing. So for now, the focus is email as a distribution channel alone. So the first thing which you need to do is to select your email engagement platform. And there are several great platforms out there. MailChimp is the global leader. There's no doubt about it. There's no argument around it. MailChimp is the single biggest email platform which is out there. Just give me one moment. There are a couple of other players, Auber and Emarsis, but my personal favorite, other than MailChimp, is Acton. Again, I think that's a name which I've mentioned earlier, and that's something which I would really recommend, especially if you're a small company which is starting up. It's an awesome marketing automation platform, and it also depends on what exactly you're looking to use the email platform for. So, MailChimp offers you tremendous advantages in terms of its uh, send rate. So if you've got, say, a subscriber base, or if you have bought a subscriber base of, say, 5 million strong, and you want to send a promotional mail to them, which talks about an offer, like, say, an Amazon would do. So if you're selling standardized products, so to speak, and you've got an enormous subscriber base, which is Amazon, in that case, I would recommend a MailChimp, because MailChimp offers you the kind of IPs it has, the kind of IP addresses it has subscribed to, and the kind of delivery success rates it has, they are unparalleled by any other competitor. So in that case, delivery success rates are the highest. And one of the key determinants of delivery success rates is the kind of IP addresses, secure IP addresses your emailing platform has at its disposal, because that's what determines. So if it's delivered to, say, an email recipient inbox, such as, say, a Gmail or a Hotmail, or even a corporate inbox, say somebody sending it to an infosys.com, some people give up their corporate email addresses as leads, right? So let's say it's sent to an Infosys mail server. The mail servers have their own set of rules to determine whether this email is spam or it's credible. So obviously, the number of secure IP addresses, the security of the IP addresses, or the credibility of the sender's IP address plays a huge part in determining whether the recipient inbox classifies the mail as spam or something which is credible. So in that sense, MailChimp offers enormous delivery success rates if you are selling, say, standardized products. And if you have a huge subscriber base, MailChimp is something which you should certainly use. So if you're selling standardized products with a huge subscriber base, use MailChimp. However, if you are selling, say, non-standard products, and you want not just a promotional email platform, but you want a platform through which you can set up automated rules for engagement, very similar to the T0, T5, T8, T15 rule, which I spoke about. Let's say there are people who register for the webinar. I want them to go through this particular nurture stream. There are people who download an ebook. I want them to go through this particular nurture stream. There are people who register for a course. I want them to go through this particular nurture stream over 15 days. If there are people who have made a purchase, and they have, who've, say, completed going through the digital marketing course with me, or who've, say, completed going through the SEO course with me, I want them to go through this particular nurture stream. If you want to set up these kinds of intelligent automated rules, which is essentially marketing automation, I would certainly recommend Acton. It's my personal favorite. That's an awesome product to use. Make sense? Yes, Acton. It's the same tool, Vipul. I was talking about Acton earlier as well. The other tool is MailChimp, which you already see here. Okay, so moving on, you've got to build your audience. Correct. Now, what are the list of activities you can do to build your email list? I want you guys, I've given you, I think we've discussed a lot of those during the course of the past 2 hours or so, but now I want you guys to actually sit down and make a list of all of the activities you can do for building up email lists in your context, in the context of your business. So why don't you take the next 3 minutes and think through what are the set of activities you can do to build up your email list. And once you have the responses, just ping it here on the chat window. Okay, coming back, Rahul, Facebook followers. Hmm, interesting. So you've got a bunch of visitors landing on your website. So let's leave aside Facebook for now. How would you make sure that you extract those email addresses? What kind of engagement magnets would you actually employ for getting users to actually share email addresses? So think through. Like you've landed on the digital, go through your own experience with digital Vidya during your entire consideration life cycle, which you went through at digital Vidya. Exactly, sign up forms. So why would you sign up? Sign up form is just the means to the end, but why would I actually sign up? There needs to be some kind of a carrot or an engagement magnet, right? That's what I want you to think through. And you know all the answers. You've been through the same rigmarole at digital Vidya. It could be a webinar, for example. So saying registration form for a webinar, that's an example of how you can generate email lists. Yes, exactly, free webinar. Or it could be an ebook, it could be a white paper, it could be anything. Special offers, yes. So what newsletters? What some people say is that subscribe to our exclusive newsletter and stay updated on the most and we would give you first information on any new offer which goes out. Right? That's something. So you get the customers get the sense that they're a part of a private elite group into which they're a part of. Free career counseling, that could be another carrot. Yes, that's a good one, Sudeep. So here's what we're looking at, right? So here, this is an example of what a lot of people do. Conversion Excel does. So here, as you can see, so if you enjoyed this post, subscribe to updates and get actionable conversion advice in your inbox. So this is something there is no right or wrong answer on. Some brands, before customers actually have the opportunity to read the blog, they have the pop-up which comes in, and they force customers to actually give up their lead information before they actually even begin reading the blog. Some brands make that optional. Some brands, like for example, we at Simply Learned, and we learned this through A/B testing. We let customers skim through the content for the first 30 seconds, and then we ask them for their lead information after they spend 30 seconds in going through the content. So they're actually interested in the content first, and now we're asking them their lead information. A lot of people get irritated if right at the point of reading the story itself, if a pop-up comes in asking them for lead information. Here, as you can see, what they've done is they've asked for the lead information right at the end of the conversation, which is another way to go. You need to think through what makes sense for your business. Here they're talking about subscribing to the blog for getting updates. The other examples are what we went through earlier: registration for a webinar, say downloading an ebook, downloading a white paper. All of these you could ask for lead gen forms. All of these are lead gen interventions. Say free career counseling, the example Sudeep gave, and so on. So you can leverage, in addition to all of this, what you can also do is you can leverage existing pools of data you already have access to, which is your list of partners, your partner network, business associates, your employees, your own personal and professional network, which you might have across your different social media platforms, the existing set of leads and prospect pipeline, which you have, and your existing customers. All of these would also get into your email lists. And obviously you cannot have a one size fits all email approach. As I said earlier, you need to have a different kind of an email approach for existing customers when compared to leads, and so on and so forth. Now what I want you to do is, I think that's something which you already have gone through, the list of activities you can do to build your email list now, right? So which includes everything. I think some of you have already given the responses which I was looking for. You can look for webinar registration, live streams. The other thing which you can look at is free course access. Let's say that you don't trust me. That's fine. You're not interested in say downloading an ebook or downloading a white paper or even registering for a webinar. Why don't I give you free access to a particular course, a free demo? Exactly. So, but give me your lead information so that I can send you the details of the demo. That's another way in which you can build up your email lists. Moving on, setting up content machinery. So various kinds of content which you can look at, right? So there is webinars, industry reports, information guides, blog posts, surveys of existing customers, and opinions of experts. So surveys of existing customers, an example is what I gave you, which we used to Simply Learn, right? So the career data labs, an example, which is an outcome of it's a crystallized outcome of all of the data mining and the number crunching which you did basis the kind of number crunching which you did basis the responses we got to the alumni career impact survey which we ran. And we presented all this in a nice content collateral which was again consumed by current prospects and current leads, and that gave them a sense of social proofing, because there are alumni who graduated out of this brand's ranks who are doing great things in their career. Maybe I should consider Simply Learn as a possible place for doing my digital marketing certification, and so on. Opinions of experts. Sometimes what we used to do, and I'm sure Digital Vidya does that as well, is they ask industry experts to also come and write content on their blog. For example, I've written a blog at Digital Vidya, and at Simply Learn as well, we used to ask several career advisors, as we call them, who are thought leaders in their respective domain of expertise, to come in and blog on our content property. And that again provides a huge source of credibility. So this is an example of actually trying to curate content from external sources instead of trying to create all the content yourself. So now what I want you to do is, what we will do, this is a very interesting exercise, is I want you to do a couple of things. So we've already gone through a list of blocking questions a customer goes through during their entire navigation life cycle, right? So I don't want you to actually list, prepare a list of blocking questions. These are all the questions, right? So one of the questions in the customer's mind is they are not really sold on the opportunity. So why do I? This is primarily applicable for brands selling non-standard products like Digital Vidya, for example. So they don't really get why they should consider digital marketing as a career option, for example, or how digital marketing certification can help them, right? That's one kind of a question which exists in the consumer's mind. The second kind of a question which exists in the consumer's mind is some kind of awareness of your product. Okay, you're offering me a course. Yes, I know that digital marketing will help me in my career, but what kind of an offering do you have which gives me the confidence that this is the best possible destination for me to purchase a digital marketing course, right? So some kind of awareness about your product. Maybe you offer recorded sessions, you offer live sessions, you offer sessions which are given by industry experts. What is it? So I need some kind of awareness about your product. Is your learning management system robust enough? So I need awareness of your product. The third is trust for the brand itself. How do I know I trust you as a brand? How do I know I can trust Digital Vidya as a brand? That's another question I have in my mind. And the last piece is around building a sense of urgency for making the purchase decision. Now, what I want you to do is you have all of the pieces of content here on the left hand side, which all of you know of, right? You've got all these pieces of content. You've got all these list of blocking questions. I want you to do a match the following, right? It doesn't have to be a one-on-one matching. It can be a one-to-many. It can be a many-to-one. I want you to think through and prepare a table, or just send me your thoughts in terms of what pieces of content would be can be used for addressing specific blocking questions the customer would have. Is the question clear enough? So why don't you guys take 5, 6, 7 minutes and think through how you would map specific pieces of content, which could be a webinar, which could be a free demo, which could be a free career counseling in the context of digital vidya. The context is digital vidya. Okay. The various pieces of content which are relevant are white paper, ebook, webinar, free demo, free course access, free career counseling, say alumni success stories, anything else which you can think of, right? And these are all the blocking questions which the customer has. So I want you to map that with this. Time starts now. Okay, interesting. Education about opportunities, webinars. Hmm, yeah. Awareness of product. So awareness of product, one key content collateral which can help customers get an awareness of your product is a product demo. Just give them a free trial, or in the digital Vidya context, give them access to a free course. Right? Let's give them complimentary access to a course. Let them actually see for themselves, log in, and experience what digital Vidya has to offer in for real. And that'll answer this particular blocking question in terms of awareness of your product which the customers would have. In terms of trust for your brand, one of the things which really helps is some kind of social proofing. So if you can give them alumni success stories, I think somebody spoke about that, alumni success stories, more than awareness for the brand, I think, Sunil, it's more about building trust for your brand. So alumni success stories would really help in that sense. So if customers can see that there are these 10 different people along with their LinkedIn profiles, and these are real people whom they can reach out to if they want to, who've actually experienced what Digital Vidya has had to offer, and they've seen specific tangible career advancements as a result of going through the course with Digital Vidya. That does it all in terms of building trust for the brand. Uh, Sense of urgency, yes, offers and discounts and all of that, that really does help. Or the other interesting thing which you could do is, let's say that there is a guest appearance, which say this global thought leader, which say a Neil Patel is making in for say session number 3 in this particular digital marketing course, and this is only available for all of those people who register within the next 24 hours. That is in a sense a promotional offer, but it's not a promotional offer in terms of a monetary discount, but a promotional offer in terms of enhanced value, right? So the product is being sold for the same price, but instead of reducing the price, I've enhanced the value of the product. I've said that as opposed to your regular offering, you're also getting an expert live session. Exactly, Susmita. Correct. You're getting this expert who's a global thought leader to conduct this course for you, but it's available at the same price, which is 14.99, 14,999. Great. That's a good point, Tista. Yes. Cool. So now moving on to the content creation process. So the content, as I mentioned earlier, you can either create it in-house, or you can outsource it, or you can curate content, or you can do a combination of the two. The other thing which you can do is you need to actually maintain a strong content pipeline and sustain it over the long term. So let me just go back to what we used to do at Simply Learn. So at Simply Learn, we had a mixture of in-house content, plus we also had content which we curated. By curation, I mean which is sourced from third party sources. And there are multiple ways in which you can do this. You can either do it manually or use certain platforms for curating content. One of the global leaders, one of the best platforms in my opinion, and something which we used at Simply Learn, which when it comes to curating content, is a platform called Curata. That's something I think a lot of you should take a look at. That's an awesome platform, and that's something which we used at Simply Learn. So the way it works is there would be in-house content which we create, which will be available. Plus, there will be content which is sourced from a third party platform, say a digital marketing institute, or say even a digital Vidya for that matter, who have actually exposed themselves on the Curata platform. And appropriate credits would be given to the third party source from where the information is being sourced from. So, what it means is that as a brand, I don't have to take all the load on myself to create all the content, but I can actually distribute the load, and if there is a larger ecosystem of content which is available. My core expertise is not creating content. My core expertise is in delivering, say, digital marketing courses. But content is more an ancillary thing. So I don't have to create all the content myself, but I can distribute some of that load to the larger ecosystem where there is content freely available by using platforms such as Curata. That's the entire concept of putting out curated content and all of that. And let me ask you a trivia question. So there was this hugely popular curated content platform which was acquired by LinkedIn for close to $1 billion. Any guesses on what that platform is? And the head of that platform, curated content platform, is now the head of LinkedIn India today. That's the second clue. Any guesses on what the platform is? The name of the platform was, rather. It's a very popular LinkedIn product even today. You want me to repeat the question? No, it's not SlideShare. My question was very hugely popular curated content platform, which was recently taken over by LinkedIn. SlideShare acquisition was an old one, uh, which was recently taken over by LinkedIn for close to $1 billion. And that product continues to be a very popular product with LinkedIn even today. It's a curated content platform. The other clue which I can give you guys is that the head of that curated content platform is now the head of, yes, Pulse is the right answer. Sudeep, you have it. A round of applause for Sudeep. Pulse is the right option. The name of the founder is Akshay Kothari, who happens to be the head of LinkedIn India today. So that is, and LinkedIn Pulse is a hugely successful product. I don't know how many of you guys use LinkedIn Pulse. It's an awesome example of curated content and of audience aggregation techniques, of content marketing techniques, and all of that. Uh, LinkedIn has done a very good job of weaving LinkedIn Pulse and LinkedIn Pulse's algorithm into regular LinkedIn newsfeed as well. That's something which you've done a really good job of. And if you see how Pulse works, there are options for the customers to read all of the content within Pulse itself natively, or the customers have the option to go to the third party site to read that content if they're interested. Moving on. Uh, the next thing which you need to do is to plan the entire customer journey across the entire life cycle of purchase. This is a simplistic representation of how you could go about modeling your customer's journey. There is an email which goes out with a piece of content, right? Let's say there is an email which you send and say that these are the top three great pieces of content which you've created. If you're interested in reading, please visit them. Customers click on it, they land on your blog page, and there you capture the lead information. So this email was possibly sent to all of those icy cold leads who maybe downloaded uh, an ebook or just subscribed to your newsletter. So they are not even remotely close to consideration when it comes to your brand. But now you've moved them slightly further along in their entire nurture stream. So these are people who've just subscribed to your newsletter, now have actually shown interest in dropping a lead information on your piece of content, or this piece of content could even be a webinar for that matter. Now they have a slightly more stronger inclination towards your brand. And that's something which you've managed to successfully achieve. You've managed to nurture them from a point where they were icy cold to a point where they are slightly warming up to your brand. Here again, right, this is an example which you saw earlier of Conversion Excel, of an email by Conversion Excel, wherein they're actually given them a piece of content in the emailer. The second call to action talks about a research report which they've recently authored, which people can click on, and after dropping the lead information, they can download. So this is what the blog page looks like. So people can land here. So if people actually clicked on the second link, they would see this particular page. And this also has a very nice engagement magnet, right? What they're saying is that if you're too busy doing your own data collection analysis or want to bring in outside expertise, we just have a new research service which we've launched, which you should certainly look into, which is an interesting way of actually attracting customer attention. Now, this is again an example, right? So, for example, let's say this is an email which is sent out to the larger audience set of leads, prospects, etc., and with a call to action. So let's take the Simply Learn context. So Simply Learn has leads for data science, has leads for big data, has leads for digital marketing, has leads for project management. So let's say this email is sent out to all. Let's say there is a webinar coming up by Avinash Kaushik in a couple of weeks' time, and there is an email which is sent out asking all of these leads to register for this webinar. It doesn't make sense to send these two leads outside of digital marketing. Right? There's no point asking leads who have shown interest in a data science course to ask them to attend a webinar on digital marketing. So let's say an outreach goes out to all of the digital marketing leads, asking them to register for Avinash Kaushik's webinar. They land, they click on the call to action button on the email, they land on the webinar page, and they possibly fill in lead information. Obviously, there would be a certain level of drop off here, and they become a lead. Now what would happen is that they would get a confirmation page upon registration saying that thank you for confirming your attendance is confirmed for this webinar. We will send you reminders maybe 24 hours before the actual webinar and so on and so forth. And what then happens is that you have follow-up reminder emails which go out to all of those people who have only registered. Now these reminder emails go to only those people who are registered, and after the webinar, a recording of the webinar again is sent to all of those people who actually attended the webinar. Here this email would actually go out to only those people who have attended the webinar. There is going to be a certain level of drop off between registration and attendance. Now this email would go to all those people who have actually attended the webinar. So this entire journey can actually be automated using platforms such as Acton or even a MailChimp for that matter. But Acton is my personal favorite. So Acton can actually help you automate this whole process. You actually don't need a human being to sit and keep triggering these emails one after another. All you need to do is set up automated rules with specific events or trigger points which send specific email templates. Is this clear? And what this also does is, so typically a lot of these webinars are conducted in platforms such as GoToMeeting, for example, like we are doing right now. And GoToMeeting has integration options with Acton. So what GoToMeeting would do is, as soon as, so all the webinar registrants, once you go to GoToMeeting and register for the webinar, that information is passed on to Acton. And the Acton rules which are configured in Acton for sending specific confirmations to registered attendees are triggered from Acton. There's no point in getting two separate notifications, one from GoToMeeting and one from Acton. So what we used to do at Simply Learn and what Digital Vidya is doing as well is we used to switch off all notifications from GoToMeeting, make GoToMeeting talk to Acton, pass the information to Acton in terms of saying that now Acton has sent outreaches, let's say the whole digital marketing lead database is 100,000 strong. And the outreach has gone to all those 100,000 saying there is this Avinash Kaushik webinar. And out of this 100,000, maybe 1,000 people come in and go on to, let's say 1,000 people click on the call to action, and some 500 people end up registering for the webinar. Now this information is passed from GoToMeeting to Acton. And what then happens is that Acton triggers a thank you mail, and then it also sends automated reminder mail. So GoToMeeting also sends to Acton the date of the webinar. Let's say the webinar is scheduled for, today is the 3rd of September, is scheduled for say 17th of September. Acton now knows that there is a webinar happening on 17th of September, and there are 500 people who are scheduled to attend this webinar. So basis your rule, what we typically do is we have reminders which go out 24 hours prior, 6 hours prior, 1 hour prior, or half an hour prior to the webinar. So these emails are auto triggered 24 hours prior to September 17th. September 17th, the date and the time is mentioned. Let's say it's 5 p.m. IST. So September 16th, 5 p.m. IST, an emailer goes out, reminder mail to these 500 people. Automatically, Acton sends this out. Again, September 17th, 6 hours prior. So 11 a.m. IST, another reminder goes out. And then September 17th, 4:30 p.m. IST, which is half an hour before, another reminder goes out. Now, despite all this, for all you know, there might be, let's say, 100 people only attend the webinar. These are the 100 people who have attended the webinar. Now, what happens is that these are people who have attended on GoToMeeting. After the webinar is complete, GoToMeeting passes this information again to Acton, and Acton again sends a thank you mail to all of these 100. And here again, this is something which is at the discretion of the organization. The organization can decide to send two separate emails, one to the 100 people saying thank you for attending, and here is the link to the webinar. Are you interested in talking to our career experts to take the lead to the next point in their entire nurture life cycle, which is probably asking them to sign up for a course or giving them free access to the course. For the remaining 400 people who registered for the webinar but could not attend for whatever reason, what they say is, we know that you subscribe for the webinar, but we're obviously too busy to attend it, but we're giving you a link to the webinar anyway. If there is anything you would like to help us with, or if you would like to talk to a career advisor, please let us know. That's another rule which can be configured. So all of this is the entire customer journey, right from the point of, so starting point here is this 100,000, which is the list of all of the people who have some kind of a passing interest in digital marketing. right down to the 100 and the 400 who say attended the webinar, to the 400 who registered but could not attend the webinar. So setting up rules which map out all of the interactions at specific points in time to all of these people during the entire life cycle is what mapping a customer journey is all about. And you can automate all of this through marketing automation platforms such as Acton or Mailchimp. Does this make sense? Any questions? Was this clear enough? Okay, great. So the next point is around segmentation and targeting. And what we'll essentially go through is what I just spoke to you about how Digital Vidya goes through its entire webinar promotion. So typically, in Digital Vidya's case, it's only about digital marketing. So they would send a note to all of their subscribers, all of their leads, all of their alumni about an upcoming webinar. And they would obviously use their own email partners. I believe Digital Vidya makes use of Mailchimp, and that's simply learned we used Acton. And once a webinar is done, a summary goes through for those people who attended the webinar, who registered, did not attend, so on and so forth. And now, what I want you guys to do is to think through other different ways in which you can actually go about segmenting an audience, right? So what I just showed you was an example of segmenting and targeting an audience basis their interest levels and the kind of actions they perform when you present them with specific pieces of content. Now what I want you guys to think through is certain other ways in which you can actually segment an audience. Spend a couple of minutes. It's fairly straightforward. If you could just think through and just type out in the chat window here certain other ways in which you can actually segment an audience group. Okay, some interesting responses here based on demographics. Yes, that's right. Segmenting someone by liking, commenting, or sharing the Facebook page. Yep. Bases their actions on social media. That's interesting. Education area of interest. Yep, yep, yep. Previous sale, new order placed, things in the cart, but order not placed. Yep, yep. That's all good responses. Sushmita, Sunil, thank you for that. Kaushik. Uh, so let me just show you. Oops, yeah. So obviously, geography-based targeting is something which is very important. Interest-based targeting, event-based targeting. So let me give you an example of what we did at Simplyland. So we had these meetups which we organized for all of those alumni who graduated out of our ranks in say from say Bangalore. Bangalore was our single biggest city. And for a lot of these physical events, obviously you need a certain critical mass. Otherwise, it's not worthwhile running these events. And Bangalore wasn't it was a city where most of our alumni, most of our prospects, most of our leads came from. And we had these what do you call it, meetups, physical meetups, which we organized in Bangalore, and for which obviously geography based targeting is very important. So what we did was we looked at all of those. We looked at the city of residence of all of the people of all of our alumni when they graduated out of our ranks. We also mapped that with where they were currently placed basis their social profiles if they had actually shared it with us, and then we sent out specific emails targeting that specific geographic customer bucket. And likewise, interest-based targeting in the simply learn context, as I said, all of those people we only targeted. So if there is a webinar which is coming up inside digital marketing, we only targeted those people who we only targeted our digital marketing lead pool. So which is again basis their interest. You can also do an interest-based targeting based basis the interest they have indicated on their Facebook profiles. That is also something which is possible. Event-based targeting, right? This is in the customer journey map which I gave you earlier. There are several examples of event-based targeting which is provided. Wherein if there is a person who actually registers for a webinar, that particular customer goes through a completely different journey versus somebody who does not register for a webinar. Again, versus say somebody who actually attends the webinar, that again is an event. That particular customer goes through a completely different journey than somebody who does not attend the webinar. In summary, what we're saying from an email customer engagement perspective, in terms of setting up automated drip campaigns or automated email nurture streams for various kinds of aggregated audience sets which you have, you need to first thing is you need to select your distribution channel. In our context, we're talking about primarily email, but there are other channels at your disposal. So if you're an app only company, for example, push notifications are also an option. There is social media, which is an option. The other thing is you need to choose your distribution tool. I spoke about a few popular email customer engagement platforms, MailChimp and Acton, which is my personal favorite. The third thing which you need to do is to build up your audience set, which is your email list. We spoke about several ways and means by which you can go about building your email lists. And then you go about setting up your content machinery, and that involves several things. Some of the work you can do it in house, it can be completely in house. Some of it needs to be outsourced. You can curate content in a scientific fashion by making use of several tools such as Curata. And the other thing which you need to do is to model your entire customer's journey, right? And that again is there is no one size fits all approach. You need to think through the ideal optimum customer journey for your business, for your context, for the kind of product which you're selling. And obviously it needs to be segmented and targeted. It can't be a one size fits all approach which you follow there. I gave you some examples of what kind of a customer journey you would follow for a non-standard product such as say digital vidya's online digital marketing certification program being sold, or versus say a standardized product which an Amazon might be selling. I also gave you an example of how you could go about automating the entire customer journey in the context of, say, a webinar registration process. How the entire set of rules, along with the days and the times and the time of action, can actually be inbuilt. That entire rule can be baked into several marketing automation platforms like a Acton or a Mailchimp and so on. Now we are at the end of today's session. What I want you to do is a couple of things. First is I want you to now, basis whatever understanding you've had over the session, which is over the past 3 hours, I want you to now write a note on how you believe audience aggregation can now help the business in your context, right? Whatever business it is, your own business, the company you're employed in, the company for which maybe you are part of an agency, and for the clients you work with, how you believe audience aggregation can help. I want you to first write a very, very small blurb on how you believe audience aggregation can help your business. The second thing is, I want you to speak out if you have any questions on anything related to audience aggregation, email marketing, and so on and so forth. So write a note first. And second thing is, please speak out and voice any questions that you might have. Okay, so interesting points from Sushmita. Anything else, guys? Hey, Aman. So, what I would like you to do is before you leave, I'd like you guys to first give your feedback in this particular link. So, I want everybody to just spend 30 seconds in giving your feedback of today's session in this particular link. I hope you enjoyed today's session as much as I enjoyed it in bringing it to you. I really appreciate you guys taking 3 hours off your Sunday and attending this session. And today's assignment, guys, while you think through any questions that you might have and keep filling the feedback, is for you guys to think through what kind of a. I want you guys to think through a holistic. You earlier spoke about the email marketing audience aggregation approach for your business. I want you to make it more detailed, and I want you to think through what kind of a email marketing approach for audience aggregation will you follow for your business, right? I just don't want it to be a three-line summary, but I want it to be fairly detailed. I want you to think through on T0, I would do this to this bucket of customers. This is how I would go about segregating my customers, right? So these are the things I would like to see in your assignment. First thing is I would like to see your customer segregation logic. This is the assignment for your business. Okay, could be any business which you're currently working in, employed for, consulting for, whatever. Customer segregation logic. Second, a detailed customer journey map for specific customer buckets using specific use cases. So the webinar example I gave was a case in point. There could be other such examples. Let's say somebody spoke about they're actually having he's running his own brand of retail tea stores, right? So, for example, maybe there is an event which the guy could organize, which involves wherein he's actually taking customers to get a glimpse of their own tea plantations, for example. So, how would the customer journey for that kind of a so and there is an email outreach which happens for customers, right? For that kind of an event. So, how would that kind of a automated journey actually look like? That is an example of in terms of the detail which I'm looking for. So in that particular case, I would need the information in terms of on T0, this particular outreach is going to happen to all these customers. On T5, this particular outreach is going to happen to all these kinds of customers, and so on and so forth. So I want it to be fairly detailed. I want you to think through what kind of audience aggregation techniques using email you will employ for your business. And I want it to be a detailed one. That's the assignment for this class. And your assignments for the previous class, we've actually not had time to. Oops. Can you guys see my screen now? Yep. So the assignment for this class, just to repeat what I said, is I want you to first think through the customer segregation logic for your business in question. Second is I want you to then map out a detailed customer journey for specific customer bucket for specific use cases. The example I gave was for a person who's having his own chain of branded retail tea stores. An example could be, let's say he's taking customers for a visit to the tea plantation. How would the entire automated customer journey map look like? What would be the interaction on T0, T5, T10, T15, and so on? I gave an example earlier about a webinar registration process. So I wanted to be fairly detailed, and I want you to prepare this assignment. The assignments for the previous class, we actually did not have a chance to discuss that today. So please do email it across to your course coordinator, who will then send it across to me. I will take a look at that and I will come back to you. And just before I forget, here is the feedback link. Once again, I really need all of you guys to fill in your feedback on this link. So all of you guys who are still on the call, please do fill in the feedback one by one and confirm to me once you've done that. And for the ones who've already done it, please do what do you say? Please do send in whatever questions you have. Let's see who else has everybody done. So there's Rashida who's done it. Sushmita has done it. Yes, I will share the notes, Vipul. Sudeep has done it. Vipul, have you submitted your feedback? Vipul, Sudeep, Sunil, Abhi has done it. Vipul, Abhinav, have you done it? Arvind Chaurasia, Goresh Mathur, Shobhit, Sushmita, Bhavay, Tista, all of you guys, have you done it? Tista, if you could just fill in your feedback, please. It's not opening. Just resending you the feedback link. Take a look at that, Tista. I think it's opening for everybody else. Maybe you want to just close the browser, open it in a new browser window. Rahul has done it. Sunil Kumar, I think, has done it, right? Rahul Prasad has done it. Goresh Mathur, have you done it? I think Abhi has done it as well. So the guys who have done the feedback and everybody else, any questions on today's session? Goresh Mathur, I'm still waiting for your confirmation on filling out the feedback. Bhavai, T Bhavai. Awesome. Thanks, Goresh. T Bhavai has filled it. Thank you. Cool then. Thank you so much for your time, guys. Hope this session was useful and informative, and I wish you the very best in your careers. Please do finish the assignment which I gave you. Before I leave, any questions on the assignment itself? Is it clear enough? Yes, the notes. Thank you for reminding me, Sunil. I will send it right now. I'm sending it to you right here. I just sent you the notes. Please copy paste it. All of the notes from today's session. The assignment for the previous session, please send it out to the course coordinator. She will send it out to me. I will evaluate the responses and come back to you guys with whatever feedback I have. Today's session, if there are any questions on the assignment, please reach out to your course coordinator. She will get in touch with me. If there are any questions you have now, you can ask me right now. Cool, guys. If there's nothing else, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure bringing this session to you. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful Sunday. Thank you.